Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here on the last day of the virtual summit. We appreciate you and your time and your attention to our presenters today. I'm Greta Lungard. I'm from the National Foreign Language Center. And before we start, let's meet our panelists. So panelist number one.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shelly Brown. I've been teaching in Texas. I am going into my 21st year, and I currently teach at a project-based learning campus.
I'm Paris Granville. I work in the central office of the Bellevue School District in Washington, and I support over 60 world language teachers, and my district is up to 4,300 seals of biliteracy.
And hello, my name is Iman Hashim, and I'm from California. I've been teaching for the last, I'm going to say over 30 years. Okay, and I am a program director at Occidental College World Language Project, and a consultant with some of the private and public schools. And I teach at Cal State Long Beach. I teach Arabic, and I'm a supervisor for student teachers.
Good morning or good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. My name is Lisa Worthington Gross, and I've just wrapped up my 17th year teaching. I teach at Northwest Guilford High School in Greensboro, North Carolina, where I teach German, and I'm also certified to teach French.
Thank you very much, panelists. So just a few words to our viewers before we start. We're going to begin by taking some general questions around the TEL domain of planning. How do we plan learning experiences that move learners from input to output? As our panelists discuss our general questions, we invite you to ask us questions in the Q&A box. We're going to be monitoring that, and we would love to hear questions associated and related to what we're talking about so that we can address them as well. We'll do our best to bring them out as time permits. The chat box is not monitored, but feel free to go ahead and comment, make connections, and put whatever other resources that you know of into the chat box that would help our learners. So let's go ahead and begin with our first question. And this has to do with planning. Okay, it has to do with planning and how do we plan? What are our best practices in planning as we prepare for online learning? And are these online learning planning steps different from what we do in a face-to-face? Yeah.
Well, for me, there are some major principles. It is still the same, which is if I wanted to plan with backward design, thinking what I wanted the students to know and to be able to do, and again, provide them with a task or checking for learning along the way, and I need them to interact with, in listening and in speaking with authentic materials, student-centered. And we've heard yesterday over and over, it is the students in the center of the instruction. So it was really refreshing to hear yesterday what the students want and to go back. It's the planning. It is how we plan. We really need to think about these students that they learn in different modalities. So it is a good thing what we are moving. I think it is a learning lesson to plan online, because I need to think how I can plan instructions and put it in a synchronous way. So I need to just identify what I can do in the synchronous or asynchronous. And we've heard over and over that input, it would be good to try to put it in a synchronous way. Then students have the chance to revisit it, listen to it again and again, and interact with it according to what they need. And then move on and keep the synchronous time, it is for the time for them to interact with each other, to connect with the students, to have to make yourself available for them, to listen to them and provide them with some support if that they need it through office hours or sometime one-on-one, again, to build this sense of community of learners. That is where it is it's gonna be our challenge, or it is something that we really need to think carefully about. And we've heard the students yesterday how important it was for them to connect with the instructor and to connect with each other, and to plan within our planning to give them the chance, again, to support each other, to work with each other. So this is, for me, with using the technology, we've been using the technology even before. So using all these technical programs and so on, we are teaching to the 21st century students. We've heard in the morning, again, it is where these students, these are the new generation. So for us, it's to adjust and to know, don't be afraid to put them in charge of their learning and make them partners and plan according to that.
And Iman, I think it's so important that you've reiterated this idea of connections and communities, because we know as world language educators, it's all about forging those relationships, and especially in this day and age where people oftentimes are at home and maybe don't feel those personal connections, that this is really our opportunity to forge that, granted, through new technologies. I know that many teachers, myself included, in the spring, as we began moving to remote learning, were nervous because maybe it was a way we hadn't taught before. But I think it's important we all bear in mind that our learning goals have not changed through all this. We still have that same standards-based instruction with the high rigor and the critical thinking skills. It's just that some of the tools we're going to use to accomplish those are going to be a little bit different. And while it will be challenging, I think it's a new and exciting adventure for both us and the learners to find new ways to connect with each other, both within our local communities, but also globally.
So for me, again, you touched on the things. It's like building the connection with the students. It's very important, again, to engage them in authentic materials. It's to ask them to become part of the looking at various style and the various things that they can interact with according to their interest, to what's relevant to them, and to think about the age level. We really need to think about the task and performance tasks. And going back to my talk yesterday, it is important to know that young children, it's different for them. It is what's the performance task that is suitable, it's relevant to them. It is different than the students at the high school or the university level. So we really need to keep this in mind and making the instruction relevant, interesting, and connected to them, to their lives.
I would just like to add that it became painfully clear in my district, we had a 7-period day where kids could choose 3 electives. And we spun from a 7-period day to a 7-period week. And so that meant we had to choose. It really forced us to focus on the essential learning, because all those can-do statements, they're not created equal. So what's actually essential? And I would agree with Iman that who knows better what's essential than the students themselves. They will tell you what's essential to them. And as we're thinking about going to the fall, we have to really think about that. We have to continue to think about that for all our courses.
Can I piggyback on that, Paris? I absolutely agree, just around that idea of being essential. I think about those essential connections, piggybacking on what Iman and Lisa have said. I have to be more intentional. I think when we moved to remote learning, I realized I relied so much about just the organic nature of, just building relationships and camaraderie, right, in the classroom setting. And then, wow, just that level of intentionality that had to be applied when we moved to remote to still stay connected, not just me to the learners, but learner to learner, as was stated earlier. I think about even what the National Foreign Language Center has done during this summit to make sure that we are connected colleague to colleague. So just, again, just reiterating that essential and the intentionality around the essential.
I think that's really important. And as we connect with our colleagues, I think one of the things we've seen is the discussion getting a little bit further and saying, here we have this great input, and we can even make the analogy to ourselves. We're getting a lot of input. How can we turn it into output? So, which brings us to our next question. How do we plan learning experiences that move learners from input to output in instruction? Let's see what we can say about that question.
Well, we know from examining the TEL framework that sufficient input, whether that be from the teacher, from videos, from images, it's important that it be culturally authentic, but that input, that rich input, is going to be required to lead the students to output, whether that be interpersonal or presentational. So I think as we're planning our units and our lessons and our learning experience for students, we really, again, with this intentionality that Shelly mentioned, need to look at what makes for good and effective input in the modern learning environment. We know that effective input is going to be comprehensible. So we really have to bear in mind the age of the students, the interests of the students, what is going to resonate with them and get them exciting about learning and spark that curiosity that is really the foundation of students wanting to communicate with each other. I talk a little bit, and I've seen in quite a few of the presentations the past few days, the importance of gathering that information from students early on. So this idea of building a comfortable community where students are willing to share and open up with you and with each other about what they're into. And then using that information, whether it's gathered through interviews or student surveys or just short conversations, figuring out what kinds of topics are we going to cover, what kinds of themes, how am I going to ensure that I'm not just building the students' language skills, whether interpretive on the route to productive and interpersonal, but also this idea of interculturality, that they're examining themselves and looking at target cultures, not just as a monolith, but in all its beautiful, complex nuances. This idea that culture is not a monolithic creation, but really something that we want to examine and talk about, which also leads to much more exciting conversations when you move to the output stage. I think scaffolding is so important, and good scaffolding doesn't happen without planning on the part of the teacher, whether that be word walls or sentence starters, sentence chunks, so that your novice learners who are really kind of in this memorized phrases stage can use what you've provided to them to already start grappling and engaging with complex issues.
Is this where I say amen to scaffolding? Is that where I say that?
Yes.
Yes, Lisa. Yes, yes, yes on that scaffolding. And let's remember, scaffolding is not just for the lower levels. It's for the upper levels too. When our input is introducing something new, right, they're going to kind of swoop down, and then we scaffold them to be able to climb back up to what they're used to being able to do. But that new thing, there's that tentativeness, right? When they're learning something new. So yes, scaffold for sure.
And if I can add a little bit, and again, because we hear about a lot of this technical or technology programs, and everybody is getting excited to use these technology programs. And we really need, when we use these, to know that they are in the process to have a different goals. And it is like in the part of the scaffolding. It is not to continue dwelling on the same practice and the same just basic things. And then we expect the students to come up with a conversation and interaction and talking about things. So we really need to think about it carefully. And it is not the tool, it is the activity itself. It is what we wanted them to do and what's the purpose of it. So it is the purpose and how it is built up until like it's the recycling and spiraling to have that until I would be able to let go and say, well, yes, the gradual release of responsibility. Yes, go ahead and do it. The other things that I heard yesterday is that, and again, with the learning episodes that we got through Start Talk and making it smaller, it's even right now, we need to make these even smaller. And it's the 10 to 2. It is something that I need to put with the input. I really need to think to reduce my input to smaller segments and give them the chance to practice. And then before I add to it, that is very important, especially in the languages that it's like Arabic and probably, the Chinese and Japanese. These are the Korean that they need more practice, and they don't have the same, cognates and letters and characters with all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just draw your attention to a presentation that was slotted for this morning before this panel? It was, I believe the presenter was Lori Clark, and she talks about using the authentic text and mining it for the writing, moving from reading to writing. And I found lots of really great ideas in there. So I definitely recommend that to people.
Mm-hmm. And Shelly, I think you are in a PBL type of a teaching environment, which sometimes can make planning for output a little bit more challenging. So in terms of planning, and I know that scaffolding is a big part of that,
Sure.
But tell us about planning for that in that environment.
Right. I go back to what Iman said. I have to start with the end. Where do I want the learners communicating? What product are they going to need to produce? And let me just explain just a little bit about our campus. These are not projects that are just world language projects. These are projects that encompass cross-curricular content. And so I have to think, okay, these learners are going to be in front of these experts. Okay, what language can I bring forward? What skills can I bring forward? Okay, all right, and then kind of go back from there. So lots of sentence stems that they're getting, lots of framing, lots of practice in class with those things. Yes, I do need to bring in experts who speak the language, yes. So they actually get to kind of do it more than once. It's exciting, but yes, they get to still have that expectation of, this is a product I get to explain, right? So there's new vocabulary for all of us because they're explaining things that they have just kind of formulated from their research. And it's quite exciting, but that takes time. That definitely takes time. And going back to what is essential, this is not the essential piece yet, but can I still weave in culture while we're talking about this research that you've done? Why, yes, I can, right? What are some Spanish-speaking researchers saying and doing in this particular area? So just trying to bring in as much support for them for that output. What does the output look like from somebody else, right? Giving them models, giving them examples who are speaking on the topic, because I'm not an expert in all of the topics that they're doing. I had to let go of that. And
Was that
just
easy?
kind of let them. No, it's not.
It wasn't easy to let go of that control?
No, it was not.
No.
But it's not about me. It's student-centered, right? So, right,
And
it's about the kids.
I kind of have a follow-up question, which brings us to our next question around planning. So is it true then that the students that you teach, they're all pretty homogenous, same backgrounds, same cultural is that the way it goes in your campus?
Only because I'm on a microphone, will I not laugh out loud?
Okay.
These children are so different. Yes, the children have some commonalities. Yes, they do teenagery things. Yes, right. There are some things that bind them together in the learning community, but there are things that make them so unique, right? Think about the labels that we have for the learners in our class. We have kids who are labeled SPED. We have kids who are approaching the targeted proficiency, kids who are exceeding the targeted proficiency, kids who are heritage speakers, kids who are, right? What are the diverse learners? Who are the diverse learners that are in your classroom, remotely or in person? Who are they? Well, the best way to find that out is to talk to them, because there's so much more to them than just this label, because our brains want to put them in this box. This is how I want to sort you to make it easier for my planning. Well, in the long run, it loses its relevance, right? When I don't jump out of that box and meet them where they are. So
in terms of planning for these diverse learners, what are some things that you have to keep in mind as you're planning these lessons with students who come from a wide variety? They've had middle school Spanish, or they haven't. So tell us, and let's all talk a little bit about these diverse learners and how to plan for them.
Right. What are the conversations that I've had with them? I can't really plan for these diverse learners if I don't know these diverse learners, right? Am I getting to know them? What are the conversations that we've had? Do I have this group that loves this? Yeah. Do I have this group that loves this? Okay. Well, how can I, what does my lesson look like, reaching into the different modalities and the different interest points that the learners have? Sometimes it's hit, sometimes it's miss, right? But I think they see my effort to reach them. Right. Yeah.
So if I can, again, follow up on this, is like, again, I am the only teacher on campus for Arabic language class. And then I have my students come in every classroom, like in a wide range. And it's their interest, what's that they can do, what that they can do. Like yesterday, I wanted to move some of the heritage speakers to the higher level, the second year of Arabic. And here's this guy who sent me an email, because I make sure that I connect with them and see where that they are at, what that they can understand. Are they only receptive? Are they receptive and productive in a limited basic language, which means in Arabic that they have the dialect more, and that they are afraid of the modern standard Arabic, and our instructions mostly it's in the modern standard Arabic, so that they feel like when they evaluate themselves, no, let me be safe and go to the beginning class, and they don't realize that it's a 101. It is the wrong place for them, because they're going to get bored, and they bring a wealth of information. Is depending on what they bring to the classroom, from the interest, from the knowledge, from the the skills that they are bringing to the picture, that it enhance. And we need to think about it, how we can play with that, and how we can build the program and give them what that they need, why that they are in this classroom. So this is where it's we really need to think about differentiation. Some of them that they are excelling even within the same classroom. They feel much more comfortable in just the listening and speaking. Okay, and that they can jump into trying new things in the speaking level. When you give them, introduce to them the printed text, that they are afraid, and that they wanted to understand every single word in it. And otherwise, and again, how that they've learned with the package that they are bringing, it's really affecting their way of learning. So until you teach them how to use the strategy and so on. So it's building on the strengths that they bring, and move them along the continuum with other skills. That is very important. And that is very, it's like you analyze, you look at things, and then you plan accordingly.
I would like to say that as long as we can keep the instruction more meaning-based and stay away from drills, in my experience, that really engages more learners. What I mean by that is when I'm doing just drill type activities, I'm engaging those kids who just like to, their brain works in a pattern way. But the problem with that is it disengages a huge swath of my learners, and it's also kind of pointless. Whereas when we talk about, so even something as silly as what color is my dress? Well, you know, unless I'm blind, why would I ask you that question, right? You know, having the questions being a little bit more meaningful. And I know it's hard with novice learners because they don't have much to say, but that's where, like Shelly emphasized, the scaffolding, you know, giving them, you know, the questions, either or. If they don't have the language, we feed the language to them and let them then give us some language back. The other thing is, it's really, I know it's a lot to like have like different readings, which you certainly can do with technology, push out different readings like to your heritage and non-heritage, and then to your kids who have like, you know, dysgraphia, a different one. But I would even just say the open-ended nature of meaning-based questions are automatically differentiated, because a kid who can give you a paragraph with connected sentences will give you a paragraph with connected sentences. And then my student who is, you know, struggling to speak in any language can give me a word or hold up a vocabulary card. So it's a challenge, but I think I just feel like the more we can keep meaning centered, the better it is for everyone, including us.
And I think too, building on this idea of diverse learners, just to keep in mind that diversity comes in so many different forms. You know, as educators, we're often thinking in terms of their proficiency levels or their learning styles. Teaching German, I tend to have lots and lots of kinesthetic learners, which kind of influences how I approach the subject matter. Even group dynamics can change the way students are going to grapple and interact with the material. And so when you come across a group that is maybe a little more hesitant to put themselves out there, how are you going to plan what should be the same lesson for two different groups of students in a way that's going to resonate with a group that maybe doesn't know each other as well and isn't as willing to share with each other? So I think those are also things you kind of have to keep in mind as you're planning your lessons, is not just to differentiate for the individual students, but for the different groups and the group dynamics that you're going to encounter as you work with your learners.
If I may add one more thing, Susan, I've heard that over and over. It is, if we can ask the students to pick and choose the group, or to allow for them, even when that they are learning or exploring, it's just to group according to their interest or their, again, ways of looking at things, and that they can support each other. Sometimes we do it this way. Sometimes we do it, it's like in homogeneous or heterogeneous. So if we put them in a different modality and each one of them is strong in one way or another, then they are supporting each other. And they love it more than when we do, or we give them some suggestions. For some reason, not some reason, but because they are the same age, and again, that they're struggling through the learning together, so that they can give each other some tips on how to handle things and to improve their learning, and to offset what their weaknesses with these strategies and their support and help with each other.
Okay, so we have our first question from our viewers. All right, and they are in the realm of planning. I know worst case scenario, we have some better, let me just say, better scenarios than others. And one scenario that might be around that might be challenging is if I have to plan for both in-person and virtual learning. So maybe I'll give you time to reflect a little bit. So what recommendations would you have? What ideas would you have? What would planning look like if I had an in-person class and a virtual class? Paris, you look like you're ready to.
Well, we've been thinking about this. You guys have I know it's like a big question. You may have seen this new concept that just emerged this spring called resilient pedagogy. And if you search for it, you'll find maybe 4 blog posts about it. But the concept is no matter what I plan has to work in asynchronous, synchronous, and in person. And I'm planning one thing. Now, there's a few technologies that can do this, like Nearpod. I don't want to plug for any one technology, but they're all going to catch up with Nearpod. And the concept would be, it's very similar to presenting off a PowerPoint, but it allows me to put lots of interactivity in it. And my kids in my room would still be using an old school whiteboard, right? Or old school vocabulary cards, and then my kids at home could be doing the online interaction to allow to do the interaction at the same time. And then asynchronous is super important because like some of our kids have to take care of their little siblings, or some of the teachers have to take care and they can't do synchronous teaching. So the great thing about Nearpod is it also allows you to open up a lesson asynchronously for kids to do at their own pace. But there'll be more technologies that catch up with you.
I can attest to this actually, Grace, and I feel like, what it is, what we are creating with the asynchronous, it still can be working in the classroom because all of our students are hooked into their phones. And just like you give them some chance, so it is just, let's think about the spatial, like that we are apart, but we are together. So let's have the same model. So although I have people with me in the classroom, and that they are some that they are at their home, at their private time. So I really need to think about them as a one community and work together and allow for these, again, the asynchronous, because it's the flipped classroom. Remember that we've been talking about this. It's like flipping the way that we are thinking about and giving about teaching and putting the the lead in the hands of the students. They need to become responsible for their own learning. They need to know that. So whether they are in our classroom or outside of the classroom, it is easy said than be done. But I think we are learning around, all the way, and we are taking a lot of ideas, and we shouldn't be afraid from failing, because failing, it is a way of learning. So we try things and we fail, but we learn. We pull ourselves together and then we learn. The other things I wanted to say, and because I'm coming from a language like the Arabic language, and we don't have a lot of resources from, as much as the other languages, it is the pairing up with the teachers. It's the to connect with other teachers. Let's share. Let's show our, again, generosity to each other and work together, because I can end up with multiple ideas and multiple ways rather than it's what's in my mind, and what I'm doing, and within my creativity. I can pull with a lot of creativity, and it doesn't have to be from my own language only. It can be from other languages.
And Iman, thank you. I have been in that boat as a German teacher. We are actually the only school in our entire school district that offers German. And there were many years when I was literally the only teacher of German in our entire district. Fortunately, I now have a colleague at my school with me as the program has grown. But I was so reliant on teachers around the world to help me, especially as a young teacher. So I think that's important to emphasize, that educators are a sharing community. They're a creative community who always step up to every challenge. I think that the number of virtual and remote professional learning opportunities that we have seen crop up all over the place this summer is a testament to that, including the conference that we're all taking part in. I know leading up to this, many of us were saying, we've never done a remote virtual conference before. Is this going to work? How is this going to work? And in just a matter of months, it's all pulled together. So I think we can use the models of things that have happened so quickly in recent times to base that on our own pathway moving forward. And just keep in mind that you are only in control of the things that you can control, and be satisfied with that, but always push and work for more.
Mm-hmm. I have to say, that prompted in me the idea of a virtual teacher and the face-to-face teacher. I mean, even if I pair up with another teacher, maybe I can be fortunate enough to pick the one or have be friends with the one who really gets this online stuff, so my partner teacher and I could plan together, and I'm going to focus on how this looks in face-to-face. You're going to focus on how this looks virtually, and we put it together. So the two of us are like two halves to the planning puzzle. That was just like, I had this moment, and I don't know who caused me to have this moment. I think all of y'all caused me to have this moment. It's like, yeah, that is a different way to collaborate, where I'm focusing on one learning environment, you're focusing on another learning environment, but then we're going to come together and use what we're both creating. Shelly, you have a response to that?
Yeah, I love that, because it's making me ask myself, is my collaboration team as diverse as my learners?
I love that.
Because if my learners are in remote, do I have people on my team, skills on my team? And my team needs to be big, right? My team needs to be Lisa. My team needs to be Paris. My team needs to be Iman, right? Because we are apart, but we're together. We're going after the same goal. And I'm like, ooh, yeah, I need people that can do this and this and this and this. And this is what's in my head. And is that going to work? Right? I need people. I need more people. And I'm so grateful to the National Foreign Language Center for this virtual summit, because I'm collecting people.
Yeah.
I'm collecting
more
people.
That brings me to our next question, because not only is it face-to-face, not only is it remote, how do I weave culture and interculturality into both of those aspects? So in terms of planning, a lot of times we get our first taste of culture in the classroom. When I walk in, I see all this. I hear this music. I see these colors. So Paris, help us out here. How can we plan to bring culture into the classroom in ways that are going to promote interculturality?
Well, I think culture is kind of the content of our classes, because if you think about it, kids come to our classes and they use language as a tool, but it's not really the content. The content is the cultures. And I really am thankful to the new can-do statements that focus on interculturality. And that's kind of the first time we saw it kind of laid out. I think the important shift in the intercultural can-do statements is, before, I think it was easy to focus on, I'll just speak for myself, the products and practices and not go deep into the perspectives. And I think it's the perspectives, as we've heard from some of the presentations this morning, it's the perspectives behind the practices and behind the products that can really help open the minds of our kids. And the other piece of the interculturality can do that I really believe strongly in is bringing our students' culture into our class. That is as much of our content, because that's our only real authentic context for communication, is getting to know our students. I'll never forget a class I had where I ended up with half the classes from El Salvador, and I was teaching French. So it was a great opportunity for me. I mean, we basically, the culture of El Salvador became as much a part of my class as French-speaking cultures. And one of my girls had her quinceañera, and her brother was in there. And so really bringing the student culture in, because they're an expert on their own culture. And it's also a time, I feel like, in middle school and high school where they're still kind of firming up their identities. And so it allows them, I never tell them their culture. I want to be really clear about that. You know, when I have a young man whose last name's Yen and he tells me his culture is American, I'm not going to argue with him. Okay, that's his culture. I just want to be clear about that. But it allows us to then bring in this beautiful tapestry of cultures and learn about each other. But by also focusing on the perspectives, it allows us to work more cohesively as a team, because that's the other part about my classes. We have to be an interdependent team where every single student, their skill is required for the class. And that includes, it doesn't matter if I have students who are highly impacted with disabilities, they need to have an essential role in my class. And so that's why I make the decision to any English I speak in my class, the filtering I use is it would only be for team building, especially in the lower levels. Otherwise, I'm going to stick 100% to the target language. And that's where I've decided to dedicate my 5 to 10% of English as team building.
If I can, add to this, it is honestly, it's not only within, it's like different cultures. It's within the same culture. There are differences in the practices. And the older generation comparing to the young generations from different part of, even within, I came from Syria. If I want to talk about Syria right now, I really need to educate myself because I've been away for the last 34 years. I'm still in touch with them, but there are a lot of things with this young new generation that it's happening, and how they're, it is with the practices that they do and the perspective why that they are doing this and how that they are interacting with each other is different. And we really need to bring it up to our students and to not to be afraid, like we wanted to explore, we wanted to investigate. This is for me, and the word I love about it from the can-do statement, it's investigate. And this is our tool. It's like we are in an exploration journey together. Let's know there's no one way or another, good or wrong answer. It's correct or incorrect. And to let it be open. And that's why our classroom, it becomes like more to life, and it becomes more interesting for the students. It becomes of things that they would love and they would appreciate. The other things is, again, it's looking at the differences, not to look at it down. And this is where it is honestly the most, I would say, difficult part, especially when we are dealing with teenagers, because that they are really pretty much, or middle schoolers, that they really look and from one way of thinking. This is the way that, why that they are doing this? This is strange. So again, it is how we can bring together, say, well, they do it this way because, and then it's not for you, it's for them. They like it. They might look at what we are doing, think, well, why you are doing this in this way? What's a strange way? So let's look at it from, it's a wide look at it like we have flowers, we have different ways of plantings, different ways of, living lives, and everybody, as long as it fits them and they are happy and that they are doing what they need to, we really need to cherish it and be happy and applaud it because it brings a joy to our life.
And just to piggyback on what Paris and Iman have mentioned, there was a presentation this morning by Megan Wong in the Cultivating a Target Language Community, where she emphasizes this idea of finding your why and helping the students discover their why. So why are we in this world language classroom together? Obviously, we want our students to become proficient users of the target language, but we really, really want them to attain this intercultural piece, help them explore and discover their authentic skills, and develop the empathy that they need moving forward to be considerate and respectful participants in a global society where we can look at the challenges that we as human beings face, whether it be systemic racism or the coronavirus challenge, and listen and hear each other's opinions while also using scientific fact to come up with solutions that are going to work for everyone and not just a subset of privileged people. And I think these are the skills that we're giving our students when we examine culture, starting with novice level learners. I think these are essential skills moving forward.
Wonderful point. All right, well, our time is getting short, so I feel that y'all have a planning message. either a message that you're going to focus on yourself, or maybe it's a message you have for our viewers. So let's just, as I'm talking, start kind of thinking about it. If you were to talk to our viewers one-on-one, planning, what learning experiences should we plan for? What are the most essential ones? What's your primary planning mindset? What would that be? Who's ready?
I've got some thoughts here, Greta, I'd love to share. I'm
Please.
thinking, how am I going to, so in my planning, I ask myself a lot of questions. That's how I plan. Because if I can answer that question, then I can move forward with it. So I'm thinking, how can I keep it engaging, cognitively and emotionally, right? How can I keep it authentic resources, the authenticity of their culture, affirming that you can be your authentic self in this space. This is where we value and we honor what got you here, right? What got you to this seat? What got you to this laptop? What got you to the screen, right? And then how can I move them from input to supported output to their individual output, being more confident as producers. But I just, that word authenticity is really resonating with me right now, and that it has so many layers for how my planning remotely, in person, is going to be impacted. Is it authentic topic? Is it authentic language? Is it authentic resource? Is it authentic to the culture of our space together? So it's kind of where my headspace is right now.
All right. Who else has got a message? Yeah, go ahead.
I do. And Shelly, just to piggyback on that real fast, we've talked a lot in this session about diverse learners, but also about these traits that the younger generation has. And I think one trait that is true of all young people, no matter the generation, is that they can see through anything that is fake, that is not authentic. So I think we as educators in these challenging times need to be very upfront with students about the challenges we all face and recognize that in our planning. Of course, we're going to shoot for 100%, but we've heard from Iman that failure is a part of learning. So I think giving grace and mercy to ourselves to allow those failures to happen and to allow some of your planning to happen organically, reflect as you go. And when something doesn't work, tweak it and share with these diverse collaborative teams we form to figure out, hey, this didn't work for me. How would you make this better? Because I am out of ideas here. So I think really letting this planning happen organically, and keep in mind, you are with these learners for a finite period of time. How are you really going to choose what is essential to get these students where you want them to be when they leave you? So as they reflect back and look back at this period of time you shared together, it's something that they take with them for the rest of their lives.
Thank you.
So for me, it's I'm going to continue on that. It's just, again, it is forming our community of learners as instructors, as teachers, and to extend our community to the students. It's like we are sharing, we are into this together, and we are struggling together, and we are trying to find things together. But again, I wanted the students to say, again, I am with you. I want to listen to you. I want to hear from you. What makes it works for you? Why you are in my classroom? Their voice is very important. If we wanted them to be part of the learning and taking in charge of their own learnings, then we really need to give them and to be flexible and again, differentiate and try to respond to their needs and why that they are, and not to treat them as like, I wanted you to learn 1, 2, 3, and this is the essential things for you. What's essential things for this students is not essential things for the others. And I think it is one part, it's to give them the chance to explore themselves, because they might not know this. So it's just to continue this journey of exploration and trying and fixing and making it better for everyone.
Thank you. And Paris, lead us home, girl.
Well, I've just been so inspired by everybody on the panel. You've just pushed my thinking already. Again, I agree that we need to ask ourselves questions as we're planning, and whatever the topic is, sometimes the topics, frankly, are not that inspiring, but whatever it is, I need to ask myself, how do I help my students find their voice so then they can chart their course? Because those students, let us not forget that those students are going to become the future president, the future senator, right? And we need them to remember our class. We need them to have a broader perspective and to be seeking multiple perspectives. And our class is the beautiful, magical class that lets kids do that.
And so thank you so much, panelists. This has been a great conversation. And for our viewers, Lisa, Paris, and Iman have their sessions. We invite you to look at those. Shelly, thank you so much for joining us. It was great. Everybody grab a quick bite to eat, and we have our high school panel coming up. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye.